Sarah Chen froze mid-step in the diplomatic hall of Colony 1, humanity's first deep space outpost orbiting Europa. Something caught her attention that no one else seemed to notice. The blue-skinned alien delegate, Zrix, was tapping his slender 3 fingers against his wrist in a pattern she recognized instantly. Asterisk tap tap tap. Pause. Tap tap tap. Pause. Tap 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 asterisk. SOS, the Universal Earth Distress Signal. Her spine stiffened as she watched more carefully. There it was again, deliberate, rhythmic, unmistakable. But how could an alien from a star system 12 light-years away know this human code? And why use it during what was supposed to be a historic peace conference? The Grand Hall buzzed with excitement. Humans in formal attire mingled cautiously with the alien delegation. The Krell, as they called themselves, had made contact 6 months ago, promising trade and technology beyond human imagination. Colony Director Williams was beaming as he guided the Krell ambassador around the room. Sarah's mind flashed back 20 years to her childhood. 8-year-old Sarah, dark-skinned with curly black hair, traveling with her white adoptive father across rural America. If you ever feel unsafe when we stop, he had taught her, tap this pattern on your wrist where I can see it. No one else will know what it means, but I'll come get you immediately. That simple signal had saved her from a suspicious stranger at a highway rest stop when she was 9. Later, as a Marine, similar coded signals had kept her squad alive during ambushes in war zones on Earth. You noticed it too, whispered Dr. Myers, the colony's xenobiologist, suddenly appearing beside Sarah. Sarah kept her eyes trained on Zrix. The tapping pattern. Yes, but that's impossible. They shouldn't know our distress codes. I've been observing the smaller ones, the ones they call assistants. Their eye movements don't match their body language. Something feels wrong. Sarah studied the aliens more carefully. The Krell delegation consisted of 8 tall, commanding figures with iridescent scales and elaborate headdresses, accompanied by 12 smaller blue-skinned beings like Zrix. The smaller aliens wore metallic collars that the Krell had described as ceremonial indicators of diplomatic status. Security personnel, maintain positions, crackled Sarah's earpiece as Colony Director Williams prepared to formally welcome the alien delegation to the podium. Through the crowd, Sarah caught Zrix's 4 violet eyes. They darted nervously while his mouth formed what appeared to be practiced diplomatic phrases to a human scientist. When Zrix noticed Sarah watching him, his lower right eye blinked 3 times rapidly. Another signal. I need to get closer, Sarah murmured to Dr. Reyes. Cover for me. Sarah moved through the crowd, her security uniform allowing her to navigate the room without suspicion. As head of colony security, she had access to all areas. But approaching a foreign diplomat directly was against protocol during formal proceedings. She positioned herself near the refreshment table, where Zrix was being guided by his Krell superior. When the taller alien turned to speak with Director Williams, Sarah moved quickly, pretending to adjust the display of Earth foods. The signal, she said quietly, not looking directly at Zrix. SOS. How do you know it? The blue-skinned alien nearly dropped his glass. His 4 eyes widened, but he recovered quickly as a Krell turned toward them. We monitored your transmissions for decades, Zrix whispered, his speech translator barely audible. Before they found us. Before the collars. They, the Krell. Not here. Not safe. Zrix tapped his collar subtly. These listen. Watch East Corridor. 3rd cycle. Before Sarah could ask more, the Krell supervisor returned, placing a firm 3-fingered hand on Zrix's shoulder. The smaller alien winced visibly before being guided away. Sarah returned to her post, mind racing. The formal speeches began, with Director Williams praising the historic alliance about to be formed. The lead Krell spoke about prosperity and shared knowledge. But Sarah couldn't focus on the words. She watched the smaller blue aliens, the ones called assistants, but who seemed more like prisoners. She noticed how they flinched when the Krell moved too quickly, how their ceremonial collars seemed to tighten when they strayed too far from their supervisors. "Something's very wrong," Sarah whispered to Dr. Reyes as the speeches concluded to enthusiastic applause. "And I think we're the only ones who see it." As the crowd dispersed for the evening, Sarah made her decision. Protocol or not, she would be watching the East Corridor during third cycle, the middle of the colony's night. Someone needed help, and Sarah Chen had never ignored a distress call in her life. The colony lights dimmed to night cycle levels as Sarah made her way through the East Corridor. Her security badge granted her access everywhere, but even she wasn't supposed to be here at this hour. The diplomatic wing was restricted during sleeping hours. She checked her watch. Third cycle had just begun. A soft sound made her press against the wall. A door slid open 20 meters ahead, and a blue figure slipped out. Zrix. The alien moved with surprising agility, constantly glancing around. His ceremonial collar was still in place, but something about it looked different. "Zrix," Sarah whispered as she approached. The alien jumped, all four eyes widening before relaxing slightly when he recognized her. "Security Chief Chen, you came." His translator hummed quietly. "We don't have much time. The dampening field I created will only block my collar's monitoring for 12 minutes. Sarah studied him. "What are these collars really for?" Zrix's fingers trembled as he touched the metal band. "Control. Punishment. We are not assistants or delegates. My people are the Navari. We were a peaceful spacefaring civilization until the Krell came to our system 80 Earth years ago. You're prisoners," Sarah said, the pieces clicking into place. "Worse. We are tools. Slaves. The collars connect directly to our nervous systems." Zrix turned, showing Sarah the back of the device where tiny filaments disappeared under his blue skin. "They use us as their public face when meeting new species. We speak their words or suffer." Sarah pulled out her tablet and took scans of the collar. The readings were disturbing. Neural interfaces, pain inducers, and what appeared to be an explosive failsafe. "Why risk contacting me?" she asked. "Because the treaty your people plan to sign is not what they think. The Krell do not share technology. They take worlds." Zrix's voice shook. "We were forced to study Earth signals and culture to prepare for this meeting. I learned your distress patterns hoping someone would notice." Sarah's blood ran cold. "The treaty signing is tomorrow." "Yes. Then Krell ships hiding behind your Jupiter will emerge. Once your leaders activate the communication devices the treaty provides, the colony's defense systems will be compromised." Zrix handed her a small crystal. "Evidence. Schematics. They're real plans." Footsteps sounded from around the corner. Zrix's collar suddenly glowed brighter. "They've detected the dampening field. Go now," he hissed, pushing Sarah toward a maintenance shaft. Sarah slipped away just as two Krell rounded the corner. Through the grate, she watched in horror as they activated something on a handheld device. Zrix collapsed in silent agony, his body convulsing as the collar pulsed with energy. "They're prisoners," Sarah explained to her hastily assembled team in the maintenance tunnel beneath the colony's environmental control section. Engineer Patel, Dr. Reyes, and Security Officer Jackson listened intently as she showed them the scans. Those ceremonial collars are sophisticated control devices. On her tablet, magnified images showed Zrix's species, the Navari, in what appeared to be historical records from their own world. Peaceful, advanced, with beautiful crystal cities. "The Krell conquered them decades ago," Sarah continued. "They used the Navari as frontline diplomats when meeting new species. Why would advanced aliens need slaves as diplomats?" Officer Jackson asked. Dr. Reyes looked up from studying the scans. "Because they're not diplomats. They're scouts. Or worse, bait." Engineer Patel enlarged a section of the crystal's data. "These are weapon schematics, but disguised as communication devices. The colony signs this treaty tomorrow, if you're right about an invasion plan." Sarah's tablet beeped. A new message had come through on a hidden colony network. Help us. The Krell ships carry neural implants for humans. They will make your people like mine. Slaves. The message was followed by coordinates, locations of Krell ships hiding in Jupiter's shadow, out of range of Earth's scans. We need to take this to Director Williams immediately, Jackson insisted. And tell him what? That I broke diplomatic protocol and met with an alien in secret. Sarah shook her head. The Krell have him convinced this treaty will save humanity from extinction after Earth's climate collapse. Then what's your plan? Patel asked. Sarah pulled up the colony schematics. The Navari can't rebel because of their collars, but we can help them. She highlighted the diplomatic quarters. I need to get back in there and gather more intelligence directly from one of the Krell. How? Dr. Rice looked skeptical. Sarah loaded her sidearm and checked the charge. We don't go through official channels. We create a distraction, and I capture one of their diplomats for questioning. With hard evidence, we can convince leadership. That's against every protocol, Jackson warned. So is enslaving an entire species and plotting to take over our colony. Sarah stood up, determination hardening her features. This isn't just about us anymore. The Navari have been suffering for generations, and if we do nothing, we'll be next. Engineer Patel shook his head but began typing on his tablet. I can disable the security sensors in Section 6 for exactly 3 minutes. After that, you're on your own. 3 minutes is all I need, Sarah replied, checking the time. The night reception starts in 30 minutes. Let's move. Sarah stared at the unconscious Krell diplomat sprawled on the floor of the maintenance room. The creature's iridescent scales reflected the dim emergency lighting as Dr. Rice scanned it with medical equipment. This is treason, Chen. Director Williams' face filled the communication screen, his complexion flushed with anger. You detained a diplomatic aide during peace negotiations. Sir, this isn't what it looks like. Sarah struggled to keep her voice steady. These aren't peaceful negotiations. The Krell are planning an invasion. Based on what? Your paranoid hunches. The word of a subordinate alien. Williams slammed his fist down. You've violated direct orders and potentially ruined humanity's first interstellar alliance. Sarah uploaded the data from her tablet. Sir, please look at these scans. They show neural control implants in the Navari, and we found these weapon schematics disguised as communication technology in the treaty documents. The director's eyes narrowed as he glanced at the data. For a moment, Sarah thought she saw doubt flicker across his face. But then his expression hardened again. This proves nothing. The Krell have been transparent about their hierarchical society, and any technology can be weaponized if you're looking for threats. Williams leaned closer to the screen. You attacked a diplomatic representative. Security, confine Ms. Chen to quarters immediately. As 2 security officers approached on the director's orders, alarms suddenly blared throughout the colony. Red emergency lights began flashing in the corridors. Sir, multiple unknown vessels approaching from behind Jupiter's moon. A frantic voice called from somewhere off-screen. They're not responding to hails and are on direct course to the colony. The director's face drained of color. That's impossible. The Krell fleet isn't scheduled to arrive until after the treaty signing tomorrow. That's earlier than Trix warned us, Sarah said, pushing past the confused security officers. They know we're onto them. The screen showed chaos erupting in the command center as sensor readings flooded in. Williams looked shell-shocked as the evidence of deception became undeniable. Director, we need to activate defense systems now, Sarah insisted. Yes, do it. Williams finally seemed to comprehend the situation. What's your plan, Chen? But Sarah was already racing through the corridors, leaving the confused security team behind. She activated her comm unit. Paddle, Rice, Jackson. Meet me at Docking Bay 4. Bring the equipment we prepared. She rounded a corner to find 3 Navari huddled together, their collars pulsing with angry red lights. They were clearly in pain, but fighting against the control devices. Your people know. One of them gasped through the translator. The Krell have activated the invasion protocol early. Sarah helped the alien to its feet. Can you take us to Zrix? The main ship. They took him for punishment when they discovered his communication with you. The colony shuddered as something struck the outer hull. Emergency bulkheads began closing automatically. Sarah, Dr. Reyes called through the comm. We've reached the docking bay with the equipment, but there's a problem. The defense grid is failing across the colony. Something's overriding our systems. It's the communication devices already installed in the diplomatic wing, Sarah realized. They were Trojan horses all along. She helped the Navori toward the docking bay where her team waited with stolen equipment and weapons. Through the massive viewport, she could see dozens of Krell ships surrounding the colony, their weapons powering up. What now? Asked Officer Jackson, checking his sidearm. The colony defenses are compromised. Sarah looked at the frightened Navori, then back at the approaching ships. Plan B. We board their command vessel directly. That's suicide, Patel protested. Even if we could reach it, how would we get past their security? Sarah pointed to the Navori. We have guides who know the ships, and they have every reason to help us. She approached the small colony shuttle they had prepared. It wasn't much, designed for maintenance work around the station, not combat, but it was their only option. The Krell believe humans are weak because we value all lives, Sarah said as she began the launch sequence. They see our compassion as a flaw to exploit, but they're wrong. The docking bay doors open to the starfield beyond, now filled with enemy vessels. Compassion is what makes us dangerous, Sarah continued, hands flying over the controls. Because we'll fight just as hard for others as we will for ourselves. The small shuttle lifted off, accelerating toward the massive Krell command ship visible in the distance. Behind them, the colony's remaining defenses began firing, providing them cover for their desperate mission. For Earth and Navori, Sarah whispered as they launched into the chaos of battle. Alarms screamed throughout the massive Krell command ship as Sarah led her small team through the purple-lit corridors. The air smelled strange, metallic and sweet, making breathing difficult for the humans. Behind them, through the viewport, Colony 1 floated surrounded by Krell vessels, its defense grid flickering uselessly against the alien technology. This way, whispered Nara, one of the Navori who had joined their desperate mission. Her collar had been partially disabled by Patel's device, though it still clung to her blue neck. The control center is 2 levels up. Sarah nodded, checking the makeshift EMP device strapped to her back. It would only work at close range, and they'd have one chance to use it against the central control node. How many Navori are on this ship? Dr. Rice asked as they climbed through a maintenance shaft. Over 3,000, Nara replied, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, all wearing control collars. There are 20,000 more across the fleet. Sarah's mind struggled to comprehend the scale of suffering. An entire civilization enslaved, forced to help conquer others. And humanity was next. A sudden hiss made them freeze. 3 levels below, a patrol of Krell guards marched past. Their scaled bodies glistened under the lights, weapons held at ready positions. They know we're aboard, Jackson whispered. That last security scan almost caught us. We're close, Sarah assured them. Patel, how's the colony holding up? The engineer checked his tablet. Defense grid at 17%. They're targeting life support systems now. We have maybe 20 minutes before critical failure. As they reached the upper level, Zrix appeared from a side corridor. His face was bruised, and his collar looked tighter than before, but his eyes showed recognition. You came, he said in disbelief, even after they started the attack. We don't abandon allies, Sarah replied. Can you get us to the central node? Zrix pointed ahead, through the command deck, but it's heavily guarded. Sarah distributed the last of their weapons. Then we fight. The doors to the command deck slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with technology beyond human understanding. Screens showed the battle outside. Colony One's defenses failing as Krell ships surrounded it. In the center stood what looked like a glowing pillar of liquid metal. The central control node, Zrix whispered. It commands all implants and collars fleet-wide. 3 Krell guards blocked their path, taller and more heavily armored than the ones they'd seen before. The lead Krell stepped forward, his scales shifting color from green to red as he assessed the intruders. "Humans," he hissed, the translator making his words sound like grinding metal. "Your species fights without purpose or understanding. The Navori accepted their place centuries ago." "Did they?" Sarah challenged. Buying time as Jackson moved into position. "Or did you just break their resistance?" The Krell commander's head tilted. "Resistance is inefficient. Your colony will serve the collective, as all lesser species must. Your technology and resources are now ours." "There's something you don't understand about humans," Sarah said, gripping her weapon tighter. "We have a long history of helping others find freedom." She gave the signal, and chaos erupted. Jackson fired at the ceiling panels, bringing them down on 2 guards. Patil launched an electronic pulse that temporarily disabled the room's sensors. Dr. Rice and the Navori attacked from the side. The battle was brutal and quick. Sarah took a plasma burn to her shoulder that seared through flesh to the bone, but she kept moving. The Krell commander was frighteningly fast, his clawed hands slashing through the air inches from her face. "Your resistance is pointless," he growled as they fought. "We have conquered 12 worlds this way." "Maybe." Sarah gasped through the pain. "You should have tried for 13. She drove her knee into a vulnerable spot beneath his scales, sending him staggering back. It gave her the opening she needed to reach the control node with the EMP device. The Krell commander realized her intention too late. "Stop. You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand freedom," Sarah whispered, activating the device. "For Earth and Navori." A pulse of blue-white energy exploded outward from the node, coursing through the ship's systems. Throughout the fleet, tens of thousands of control implants and collars simultaneously shut down. On every screen in the command center, they could see Navori collars falling away, their eyes widening with the first taste of freedom in generations. Zrix touched his bare neck in disbelief. It worked. Outside, the coordinated Krell attack faltered as chaos erupted aboard their ships. Navori crew members, suddenly free from control, turned against their oppressors. "Send the signal to the colony," Sarah ordered Patel, clutching her wounded shoulder. "Tell them to target the Krell ship's propulsion systems only, not the crew areas." "The Navori on those ships?" Jackson asked. Sarah nodded, watching as the screens showed rebellion spreading across the Krell fleet. "They're fighting for their freedom now, just like we are." 6 months after the battle that became known as the liberation of Europa Colony, Sarah Chen stood before the newly formed Interstellar Council. The Grand Chamber had been constructed in the colony's expanded diplomatic wing, redesigned with input from both human and Navori architects. Tall windows revealed the stars beyond, including the now visible glow of Jupiter. Sarah's dress uniform bore the scars of her journey, a new insignia that combined Earth's traditional olive branches with the crystalline symbol of the free Navori people. Her shoulder still ached where the Krell plasma weapon had burned her, but the doctors said the pain would eventually fade. Representatives from 12 star systems filled the chamber. Some were species Sarah had never seen before, beings who had hidden from the Krell for centuries, but now emerged to join the alliance. In the center sat the council leaders, 3 humans, 3 Navori, and 2 representatives from other freed worlds. "The Liberation Alliance succeeded because we recognized something universal," Sarah explained as she presented her final report. "The desire for freedom crosses all species boundaries." She gestured to the data displays showing the aftermath of the rebellion. 57 Krell ships had been captured intact. Thousands of Navori had been freed from control collars. The Krell leadership had retreated to their home system, their empire crumbling as news of the rebellion spread. "The Krell believed their strategy was perfect," Sarah continued. They would use one conquered species to help subjugate the next, creating layers of control. What they didn't account for was our ability to recognize suffering in others, even when those others looked nothing like us. Director Williams nodded from his seat among the human delegation. The months following the battle had changed him. The guilt of nearly leading humanity into slavery had driven him to work tirelessly for the new alliance. "We have reviewed your recommendations for interspecies communication protocols," announced the Navori Council leader, her voice translated perfectly by the new, ethically designed translators. "The system of universal distress signals will be implemented immediately across all Alliance vessels." As the session concluded, Zrix approached Sarah. No longer a prisoner, he now served as the Navori ambassador to Earth. His blue skin had regained its healthy luster, and the scars where his collar had been were fading. "Ambassador Chen," he greeted her formally before breaking into what she now recognized as a Navori smile. "Your new title still sounds strange to me." "Not as strange as being called a hero," Sarah replied. She had never sought recognition, but the story of the Marine Security Chief, who recognized an alien SOS, had spread throughout human space. Zrix presented her with a ceremonial gift, a communication bracelet crafted from salvaged parts of Navori control collars, now transformed into something beautiful. Etched on its surface were dots and dashes forming the pattern that had started everything. SOS, Sarah smiled, running her fingers over the pattern. Such a simple signal that changed so much. "A small pattern that changed the stars," Zrix replied. "Your human ability to recognize suffering, even in aliens you barely understood, saved 2 civilizations, perhaps more." As news spreads, they walked together to the observation deck. Below them, in the colony's educational center, human and Navori children played together in the newly established school. Sarah watched as a young Navori girl taught a human boy the traditional greeting gestures of her people. "They will build a different future than the one the Krell imagined," Zrix observed. Sarah nodded. "A better one. The expansion fleet reports finding 2 more worlds with populations under Krell control. The liberation protocols we developed are already being implemented." In the distance, a new class of ships was under construction. Vessels designed by both human and Navori engineers, built specifically for search and rescue operations across the stars. Their hulls bore a simple emblem: 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots. "There's still so much we don't understand about each other," Sarah admitted as they watched the children play. "Cultural differences, biological needs, ways of thinking. But we understand what matters most," Zrix replied. "When someone signals for help, we respond." As night cycle began in the colony, lights activated across the diplomatic quarter. Sarah thought about how far they had come from that first moment when she noticed a strange tapping pattern. One small gesture that had revealed a universe of suffering and possibility. "The Krell believed compassion was our weakness," Sarah said quietly. "They never understood it was our greatest strength." Together, human and Navori watched as the stars seemed to shine brighter over their new shared home, a beacon of freedom in a universe where no call for help would ever again go unanswered.